Thank you, Mrs. Vice Mayor. My first duty and my first pleasure today is to introduce Mr. Chuck Kohler. Chuck and I are going to describe to you two very important events in our lives and in the lives of many here today. It's my distinct honor to be able to introduce Chuck. Chuck is a Pearl Harbor survivor who was assigned to the Ford Island Naval Air Station in the middle of Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Mr. Kohler is one of the estimated 3,000 living survivors of the 80,000 plus veterans who were on duty in Hawaii on the day of the attack. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Chuck Kohler.
How many of you noticed that V-shaped flyover a little while ago? Even Mother Nature is cooperating. I was in an upper-level office, Aerial Patrol Squadron, VP-23's hangar, harbor inlet end of Ford Island, in the center of Pearl Harbor, on the morning of December 7th, 1941. Suddenly, simultaneously, a tremendous roar, bomb fragments, window glass crashing into the back of my head, ears, neck, and shoulders. Thinking an airplane had crashed, I got up, shook off what I could, hurried down to ground level out the hangar door. Another roar. I looked up to see another airplane coming in a power dive, and I'm seeing these blinking or flashing lights, hearing these popping, buzzing, and whizzing sounds about me, but I'm a 17-year-old recent farm boy, and I don't recognize them for what they are. My attention is going to that big old bomb hanging there on the bottom of the fuselage between the fixed landing gear. Suddenly that bomb began to fall, that airplane began to level out. By the time it was in level flight, I don't think it was more than 200 feet above my head. That's when I saw and recognized that round red emblem on the bottom of the starboard wing. These were not friendly people. Back inside the hangar, the other few that I was on duty with that morning were rushing toward the back door. Someone shouted, "Follow me," and I ran after them as they went out the hangar door, jumped into a construction ditch. I jumped in behind them. When I straightened up, I'm looking at a guy that has that ordnance insignia on his uniform. "You got a key for the ammo shack." "Yeah, let's go get some guns and fire back." We jumped up out of the ditch, started to run. Somebody shouted, "Get back in the ditch or I'll put you on report for disobeying a direct order." Disregarding that and the fact that bombs and machine gun bullets were raining down on the airplanes and the hangars in the area where we were headed for, we made it to the ammo shack. Another guy and I, a 50 caliber machine gun, 2 canisters of 50 caliber ammo in the left gun blister of a PBY flying boat, parked on the ramp. He, bigger than I, got the gun into the mount, swung it out into firing position. I come up with a belt of ammo expecting to load. He was just standing there staring skyward. I looked up and there came another. Those same flashing lights. Now I'm only hearing popping sound. A big old bomb hanging there. And I couldn't wait. I reached across, slid the lock forward, threw the breech open, threw the belt into the loading mechanism, slapped the breech closed, grabbed the charging lever, pulled back, let it go, bam, we got a round in the chamber. "Shoot," I shouted, and he pulled the trigger, and I watched those tracers go through empty space behind that airplane. I think that's when my country boy hunting instinct took over. I used to shoot jackrabbits on the run, Chinese ringneck peasants on the fly. No, not with a shotgun, with a .22 caliber rifle. I shouted, "Let me get the next one." He let that gun down, stepped aside, I picked it up, and the muzzle come down, there's another. I get a bead and a lead on him. I pulled the trigger. I kept on leading and firing. When I couldn't raise that gun any higher, I still fired until the fuselage of that airplane had passed overhead. I watched those tracers. Most of them went right into that round opening of that engine cowling, then stitch to stitch, right down the bottom of that fuselage. Now you gotta know, and you gotta remember that following each one of those tracers, there are four regular bullets. So I know here, and I know here, that I did some serious damage to that aircraft, but I'm back looking for another. There, about 2 city blocks away, out over the channel, is another one coming in a steep banking left turn. I think he's going to make another run on it. I thought if I use the front of that airplane as a lead, I'll be able to get a couple rounds in somewhere near that cockpit. I squeezed the trigger. I don't think I got off more than about 6 or 8 rounds, but I saw two of those tracers disappear into that fuselage. And when they did, that airplane did an abrupt roll to its right and was gone from my field of fire. No more aircraft. No more aircraft came back to bomb or to strafe our end of the island that morning. We stayed at those guns. We fired at other airplanes on their way to or from other targets. Shortly thereafter, the USS Nevada came down the channel, making a run for open water. Those planes got on that like a swarm of bees. But by now, the airplanes on our ramp, out there on the apron, and a hangar adjacent to us, between us and the channel, were burning so fiercely and putting up some heavy clouds of dark smoke that it almost obliterated our field of fire. 60 years later, I was watching television. They were interviewing these pilots. One of them said, I was the lead pilot of a group of 9 aircraft. Our target, the hangars in the airplanes on Ford Island, that's where I was. He said, when I went in for my first run, strafe, dropped a bomb, there was nobody. It was like everybody was asleep. But by the time I had went around and came back and was lining up for a second run, there was so much fire coming up that I turned and went elsewhere. There's the guy that dropped the very first bomb to fall on Ford Island that morning. That's the bomb that got to me physically, that spilled my blood, maybe some of the first blood to fall at Pearl that morning. But I think in spite of that, I'm the guy that got to him with that 50 caliber machine gun and changed his mind about strafing us the second time. I would hope that there are a lot of you here today who will be going to Pearl Harbor, to the Arizona Memorial in the near future, which I plan to do. Let me suggest to you that while we're standing there in the deck of that memorial, if we'll look over the side, we'll see the hull of that vessel resting there on the bottom of the harbor. Then, if we'll turn our attention to all those names listed there on the honor wall, they will serve to remind us that there are 1,177 crew members still down there, still aboard that vessel over which we would then be standing. Then, if we will listen very, very carefully, not only with our ears, but with a grateful heart and a respectful mind, all 2,405 of those victims will communicate with us, and they will do so in unison, as if with one voice, and their message, their plea will be the same. Remember us. Remember us. We gave our lives in service to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. That was inspiring, and I can assure you it's a hard act to follow here. Thank you also for your service before World War II, during World War II, and after World War II. A real patriot, a real hero. Thank you.